Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
That's the other aspect to it is we get ourselves into that road where we hyper focus on one area. Usually it's a profession, and we try to get ourselves into a financial standing to where we feel we can cut back. But now your boss looks at you and goes, okay, well, you were working overtime, and you were the guy we could call on. We gave you everything you asked for. Now we can't ever get you on the phone.
Right.
We couldn't get you to work a day of overtime if we paid you triple what we were paying you now. And if you don't do that, you never get that. Your family's going. Well, you're gone all the time. We see you. When you come and when you leave, and that's it. And then you get into that boat where it's like you've lost your wife, you've lost your children. You're paying more money now that you've lost them in alimony or child support or whatever, and now you're stuck in that rock and a hard place where it's like, do I keep going down this road and eventually break myself physically, mentally, emotionally, and now I'm staring down the barrel or the bottle, one of the two things that are going to put you in an early grave, or do you get yourself back to where you used to be? And you are the deciding factor. You have to be the solution to your problem. And the problem is you, and the only way you're going to make it out is to fix yourself.
Well, so I know that for the longest time, I don't know if they call it the rat race or whatever they call it.
Right.
We were always me and my wife. We were always focused on. I think it was more me than her. She was more so just supportive of me,
Right.
Because she couldn't care where we lived or what we any of that other stuff. But I wanted to have the big nice house, the big piece of property, the nice cars. And all this other stuff. And so what I found was at one point I had the 200,000 square foot farmhouse, a nice little piece of property or whatever.
Yep.
Now, granted, it wasn't a multi-million-dollar piece of property or anything, but it was a decent little property. And I had a nice truck that if I was to buy it brand new, it would be $100,000 truck. And so she was driving something nice, and so it's like all that was going on, but I was working all the time in order to put that out there.
Yeah.
And so what I was doing was I was missing out on the little things, when my son was a toddler, and don't get me wrong, I wasn't an absent dad. Like we had great times, and I got great memories with my son or whatever, but you miss out on those opportunities. And so what we did recently in the last 2 years, year and a half or so, is we started focusing on, hey, I don't want to have a mortgage. I don't want to have a car note. I don't want to have all this other stuff. And so that's why we downgraded and, went from, a nice house down to, a house that was built in 1953 that we are redoing everything,
Right.
and it's been, kind of hectic doing it, but it's all been cash flowed and stuff like that. And I got rid of the big diesel truck, and now I'm driving, an older thing that doesn't have a note. It cranks every time I go to crank it. And so I can't complain there. But also what it did was it brings up this thing where, rather than me chasing, because before it was, hey, I could quit a job so long as the next job pays more.
Right.
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 And so it was one of the things where you always quit up, you always,
Right.
so long as you're moving up, whatever, well, now it was, hey, look, if my wife, she was changing jobs, and it's going to be a little bit of a pay cut. It's like, hey, let's make that happen because it was going to be a better move.
Right.
It was going to present more time. Either her being at home better, or just not being as exhausted or
Right.
agitated when she shows up. And it was I'm happy where I'm at. Don't get me wrong. Like, I like my job. I like where I'm at. I like the agency I work for and everything. But you always have these conversations where it's like, okay, what if something else presented itself? Well, we're now, if we have a conversation with it, we're not necessarily stressed about how much money is going to come in. Like, it was, hey, if you decide you want to go do this or that, we can afford to take a pay cut, and it changed our whole dynamic because
Right.
rather than focusing on, and I think that's where it's at, is typically your focus as a guy is, hey, I want to be good at work. I want to outshine this guy. That way I can get this promotion. And if I get this promotion, a couple years later, I should be able to get, if I get the supervisory spot, a couple years later, I should be able to get the manager spot. From there, all I got to do is make friends with this guy, give it about 5 years, and then I could be the regional manager. And
Right.
you're playing this chess game.
You're trying to map it out. Yeah.
You're putting together they call it your 5-year plan, 10-year plan. I don't know what that means. But anyway,
Yeah.
you take in, you put all this together because nobody wants to be the guy on the bottom. You always
Right.
want to be the guy people answer to. and we focus on that, well, you lose focus at home. And so what I found was, I kind of shifted my focus where I'm not concerned about, going up a ladder at work or anything like that. I've been a business owner. Like
Right.
I know what stress is at the top of the ladder. If you've never been on top of the ladder, you don't really know. You think you know, but you don't.
Right.
And so it's like I'm not concerned about climbing the ladder. I'm not going to turn down a promotion, but I'm also not concerned. Oh, let me go. Sabotage this guy so I look better, because that happens. Focusing at home, and so now it's all of a sudden when I get off work, I'm happy at home. I'm taking in, and while there's still stress, there's still things that's got to be done. I don't feel like I don't belong in my own house,
Right.
because that's what happened. For the longest time was I would get home and I'd sit in my recliner. I'm like, all right, I'm sitting down, but in 30 minutes I've got to get up. I've got to go put my boots on. I got to go grease the Bobcat so I can load it up on the trailer. If I do all that tonight, I can sleep for an extra 15 minutes tomorrow morning. And like you're just going down this thing where you're at home, but your brain's gone. And so I think a lot of what we've got going on is, you didn't sign up for this. You didn't sign up for this life to be going the way it is. You didn't, you wanted, a different map out, but you don't get to play the victim. You're the one doing it to
Right. Exactly.
majority of the time. You're the one doing it to yourself within reason. Again, now, like you had an issue where a spouse cheated on you. You can't help that.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't harp on it and play like you get to be like we've talked about several times. When I lost a job,
Right.
my wife
Take
told
today.
me, "Hey, take today, wallow, cry, do whatever if you want to go sit outside in the mud and just boo-hoo for 4 hours, you go do you, boo.
Right.
But tomorrow it's time to get to work." Well,
Right.
and let's present that to the listeners. Hey, I get it's not going the way you want it to go. I get your bank account has more zeros in it, than it does other numbers.
Right.
Like I get all that. I get that. Hey,
Right.
you're choosing your beer based on the price, not based on the flavor.
Right.
I've been there. I understand what you're going through, but you don't get to stay the victim. You can't
Right.
if you're going to stay the victim. And this is where I think I don't listen to a lot of David Goggins stuff, because I think it's a little bit more aggressive than what a lot of guys need.
Correct.
But I think that's where his stop being a mindset comes from.
Yeah.
Is hey, you can't, by all means take today, but you got to move on. Like
Right.
it's time to get up out of the mud. You can't stay there. And so, we see it a lot with divorces. You get so at work. I think I would say probably 50% of the calls for service.
Yeah.
Probably come from some form of either
Relationship
child custody
turmoil.
or relationship turmoil where you
Yep.
show up and it's a husband and wife or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, who at one point they loved each other.
Yeah.
At one point, they made the decision, hey, we want to move in together. This is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. And now when we get called, they absolutely hate each other.
Oh yeah.
And
Bottom of the barrel, the most pettiest fights over the dumbest, and we say dumbest. We say dumbest because it's in our brains in those moments. You're like, this is petty. We're really fighting over whether or not he put the butter knife in the sink or left it on the counter.
Right.
And in reality, it's one of those things where she's told him a million times the sink is 3 inches to the left. Just put it in the sink. And we as men, in our brains, are like, I might want another peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Right.
So I'm not going to put the knife in the sink because the moment that knife touches the sink, I'm not using it again. And then I got to go get another one and get it dirty. But we as men, we never go back when we realize we didn't want another peanut butter and jelly sandwich, put the knife in the sink.
I'm going to say it come across as one of the dumbest calls I've ever been to.
Right.
And this is, I'm not going to say names, not going to say where it happened at, so good luck finding it. I got sent to a house because a husband and wife were having an argument, right? And I didn't have any information other than they were arguing, and they hung up the phone. So it's like I get there and I walk up, and female comes outside. Hey, I'm Deputy Phillips with the sheriff's office. You called us. What can I do for you? He won't change the batteries in the smoke detector. And I looked. I remember because it was one of the days where I had a lot mentally going on, and I remember looking at her like, "You called us,
Right.
because he wouldn't put batteries in the smoke detector." And so I'm like, all right. I'd also got an email, from the administration because it was, we had high call volume, And they're like, look, we understand that sometimes you may think something's dumb. You may think, hey, this is not a reason to call law enforcement. But these people, for whatever reason, this is their emergency. This is what they need attention on.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, try to take that. And I remember thinking, I was like, why didn't you call the fire department for this? Like,
Right.
I feel like smoke detectors or a fire department
Right
issue,
up their alley.
Literally, you can get a 45-minute session on the reasons to change,
Right,
on,
right.
on why to change the batteries and smoke detectors or whatever. And so I'm like, all right. And so I'm listening to her. He's a no good, lazy, sack of crap, and all this other stuff. And I'm talking about, she is just berating this dude. And he's on the porch. She's off the porch in the driveway talking to me, and he's just on the porch. He's not saying nothing. He's just sitting in a chair. And I'm talking about, she's they're just this dude was slime among slime.
Right, right.
And it's like, all right, let me go talk to him. And so I go up there and talk to him, and I was like, look, man, why don't you change the batteries of the smoke detector? One, it keeps me from getting called to your house. Because honestly, I was looking at it from a selfish standpoint. I was like, look, it keeps me from getting called to your house. She's 5'2". She probably doesn't want to pull the ladder out to climb to the 9-foot ceiling and change a smoke detector
Right.
out. He goes, and it was the funniest thing I think I'd ever heard. He goes, I would rather listen to the beeping of the battery being dead and listen to her whine and complain than listen to it go off every time she cooks. I laughed so hard. He said, bro, she could burn everything. She goes, he's like, she can't cook to save her life, but yet I'm responsible for changing it. He goes, you know how long it takes for a battery to burn up because it's constantly beep, 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 beep going off? He goes, she's killing the 9-volt batteries. I'm just like, if ever there was a valid argument,
right.
to a dumb argument, that was it. I was like, that's I got nothing.
Right.
Like, I wish y'all the best, and I just left. Like, I can't solve that.
Right.
But I thought it was hilarious. You wouldn't think there'd be a counter argument to it, but there was.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where something so petty, something so small,
Right.
and she I'm telling you, she berated him like he was a piece of crap. And don't get me wrong, he was not the nicest to her either, but they're living together. They formed a house together. They got kids together, and they're taking this approach where something as simple as a $6 battery and going inside of a smoke detector became a crisis
catalyst,
for him,
right?
It became a crisis, and I don't know what puts guys in that spot. Like, I don't know how you get to where something so minor. Obviously, there's something underneath the surface.
Right.
But I from the standpoint of being a guy who's obviously been in a marriage long enough, I know that there are very minor things that me and my wife will fight over, and we both know at the time we're fighting, it's over something bigger.
Right.
That we're not even really mad about what we're arguing over. But I found in my life a lot of that changed the moment I stopped focusing on work all the time and focusing on everything else and started focusing on things that would make my home life better.
Right.
All of a sudden, a lot of those arguments ended. And don't get me wrong, we still have our spots where we're like, hey, look, I need you to leave me alone for a little bit. And she'll tell me, hey, I need you to leave me alone for a little bit. And that's fine. But that's just two people living together. But I think so many times we get so distracted by, hey, this isn't, this life isn't going. I guarantee you, if you'd have found that dude at 16-year-old, whatever his name was, and be like, hey, in 20 years, you're going to call the cops, and you're going to be like, she wants me to change the smoke detector batteries, I'm not doing it. That's the dumbest thing in the world,
Right.
So
right.
it's one of the things where you get a lot of marital drama that honestly isn't that big of a deal, but it's because the focus has shifted rather from each other. Because you look at the weddings, people get married all the time, and it's he wants to make her happy, which is why he spends an outrageous amount on an engagement ring and a wedding ring and a ceremony and all this other stuff. She spends an outrageous amount on a dress she's going to wear maybe one time for 15 minutes, and gets these flowers and this cake. You spend all this money on all these different things because these two want to put their life together.
Right.
And for a tenth of the cost, you can get divorced and just make payments to each other the rest of your life.
Right,
You
right.
know, and so that's, and I always found it interesting that, you know, how easily some people go down that road now.
My thing has always been, you know, if I treat everything like a rock in your shoe, and what I mean by that is sometimes be middle of work and I'll find there's a rock or something in my shoe. To a degree, I can put up with it for a minute if I'm not in a position to stop and take my boot off and take the rock out.
Mm-hmm.
I do the same thing with the relationships, and you know, amongst of all the people that I'm friends with or whatever, I'm dating, I'm trying to meet somebody or try to, you know, find somebody to spend life with. There are certain things that people do that in my brain I'm immediately gonna go, you're like the rock in my shoe, and I can tolerate this for a little while, but eventually we're gonna address the rock,
Right.
and I'm either just gonna cut you off completely, or we're gonna take the rock out and be able to move on, and it's one of the reasons now, close to my 40s, and trying to date and trying to get into relationships. And I look at the dumb things like, is she going to nag me about the smoke detector? Jokes on everybody. There are no smoke detectors in my house. And if there are no batteries in them. Not because they beep, but because I probably
Right.
just didn't replace them. Actually, I don't think I put any back up after you painted, after you did the work in the hallways. But that's the stuff, you know, like I drink Red Bulls. I drink them all the time. That's my go-to drink. And one of the arguments that my ex would have with me all the time was the Red Bull cans. And part of it is I forget. I would genuinely forget where I left the can. I'd go open another one or whatever, and then I'd find it, or, you know, and I'd end up having like 4 or 5 cans everywhere. I can tell you where they all are right now. They're on the grill out back, because that's where I end every day is walk out back, take the dog to the bathroom, set my Red Bull down on the
Right.
grill, and then I completely forget about it. So there's a good probably 12 or 13 of them out there that I just need to go pick up. But that was one of the things that would drive her up a wall. You know, you leave your cans everywhere, your cans everywhere. Granted, you know, she did some things.
No. I 100% agree with her that you could have easily picked them up. I get you forgot them, but
Shut
when you
up.
walk back
Mind your
by them, you
business.
can pick them up.
Whose side are you on?
That being said, it doesn't justify going and sleeping around with somebody else. You know, so I'll play devil's advocate for both sides.
I like you're like someone else, as if it wasn't like everyone else. But anyway, so it's that goes back to the you're the problem, you're the solution. Like everybody knew that something wasn't right. Everybody knew there was a problem, and when it all came to a head, it was me who had to solve the problem. I was the problem. Not so much in the relationship. Clearly it was going downhill, and it wasn't my fault that it was going downhill. I can't control somebody sleeping with other people or doing the things that she was doing, but I can control whether I'm in the situation or not. And that's why it was okay. I'm going to have to divorce you. I'm going to have to make you leave the house, go get your own place, and go our separate ways, because if I stay in this and I continue to try to work through this, I'm the problem. I'm continuing to allow this toxic, bad situation to keep going forward, knowing that there's nothing in this for me. There's no reward versus, you know, loss. Everything in this is my fault because I'm allowing it to continue. It's the same thing with a bad job with bad bosses. I know everybody's seen the meme. Nobody leaves a good job. Everybody leaves bad bosses. You know, it's the same thing with relationships. Nobody leaves a good relationship. They leave bad wives or whatever. To the exception, we all make that mistake of we left a really good job because we misunderstood the signals or misunderstood what we were doing in that job that wasn't allowing us to progress. And we jumped onto what was shiny and pretty. And I did that. I left a good job for a job that I thought was great because the pay was good. I didn't calculate in what they were charging me for healthcare. I didn't calculate what they were charging me for a take-home vehicle. I definitely wasn't accounting for the politics and everything else that came with that. And I left a decent job with a good ability to move forward and learn for a job that I thought was going to give me the things that I had hoped for. You know,
More rapid satisfaction.
Right. With even promises of in 6 months here, we're going to do this, and this. And they failed me. They failed me to a point that I almost left that career field altogether because I was like, you guys did me so dirty that I left a place where, granted, I wasn't getting what I wanted right away, but I wasn't treated like I was an idiot or treated like a burden. I was actually valued when I would show up. People wanted me to show up. You know, there were constant phone calls that at the time I thought, well, this is annoying.